For a very long time, critics have said blind bidding has contributed to Canada's astronomical house prices. It's a widely used practice where offers on a home are kept secret, meaning if you're looking to buy, you cannot see competing bids. That could lead to aggressive bidding wars, and the winning offer could be thousands above a competing offer. Well, now changes are coming. The Ontario government is giving home sellers the option of sharing competing offers with buyers bidding on their properties. To discuss, let's bring in Karen Yolevsky, Chief Operating Officer at Royal LePage, Alain Weintraub, co-founder and director at Mortgage Outlet, and Kevin Krigger, president of TREB. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Karen, as it stands, this measure is completely optional. Buyers can now see competing offers, but only if the seller chooses to disclose that information. You see the issue here, right? Why would a seller want to do that?
We believe that optionality is great. This is a good news for consumers, for both buyers and sellers. It will provide more confidence for the process overall, and more information will aid both sides of the transaction if the seller does choose to participate in the open process.
Right, options are always a good thing. Alain, we'll come to you next. Do these new regulations mean anything, though, if there's no incentive for a seller to share those details? I mean, typically homeowners benefit from blind bidding, right?
Well, that's actually an interesting question. If you think of auctioning fine art like a Banksy or like a Picasso, there is an auction fever, and there could be an unintended consequence where people get into a real bidding war and keep raising and raising. So there actually might be a dynamic that this further pushes prices upwards.
Kevin, do you see that happening? Prices being driven up even more so?
I think if you look at markets like Australia and New Zealand, where there is currently an open process, it certainly hasn't reduced price. Both markets have seen a rise in price, very similar to the type of increases we're seeing in our market. So I think there's a difference between value and process. And looking at the open process, I don't think it necessarily leads to lower values.
Okay. Karen, is this practice really fair to the buyer, though, to all the people who feel they're being pushed out of the market, they're bidding in the dark, and they can't even make informed offers?
From our perspective, the real supply, the issue is really the supply issue that we've been seeing for many years. And that's what's really impacting buyers and creating that frustration in the market that we're seeing. Supply issues, they're harder to fix. They take a lot longer. We applaud that the government at all levels is working on a number of initiatives to help with the buyer frustration that we're seeing. But that seems to be what really is driving some of the issues in the market today.
Kevin, people seem to be divided on this issue. Some people say this is about price transparency, especially when we have a housing crisis on our hands. Others don't see it that way. Where do you stand?
I think we certainly applaud the provincial government in modernizing the regulation that exists around real estate. Our current regulation is from 2002, and I think everyone would agree the realities of the market and certainly technology and overall innovation has occurred over that lengthy period of time. So certainly I think bringing other options to the table, and in this case, the option of a more open and transparent process, I think certainly is a valuable tool and a win for both buyers and sellers. In terms of uptake, there are different sort of thoughts around what this process will entail and ultimately what its effect will be on the net amount that the seller ultimately achieves. But there are arguments both ways. So I've certainly spoken to seller clients who would be open to a more open process because they feel that based on the limited supply, it would actually lead to further competition as opposed to sort of negating competition, which I think is the argument that's being put forth.
Right. Interesting, because this could go both ways. Alain, I know you know this. The feds have a plan to ban this practice all across the country. It's something Ottawa is trying to do. To ban or not to ban, where do you stand?
Well, I'm in favor of transparency. I'm in favor of choice. To me, what this boils down to is supply and helping Canadians buy homes. You have a nurse married to a teacher. They've gone to school, they've worked hard, they have a $50,000, $100,000 savings, and they cannot afford to buy a property. They cannot get a mortgage. They cannot start their life. So again, transparency, tougher regulations, all of these things are great, but they're not addressing the core issue that really is impacting the day-to-day Canadians starting their families, growing their families, and wanting to move up in the real estate world.
Right. Karen, you've talked about this, that this measure doesn't really do anything to tackle the supply issue that we're dealing with. So what do you think the government should be focusing on instead then?
Red tape reduction in order to get as many units built as quickly as possible and put into the market, ensuring that there are incentives to save for homes, and which we've seen in recent decisions made by the government. Any program that really helps somebody into the market for the first time would be beneficial to allowing people to get through and be able to make that first purchase. And then also, again, just to have more supply available and to work collaboratively with the three levels of government to ensure that the red tape is reduced and that projects are approved in a timely way.
Right. Kevin, this isn't a bad thing, that's for sure. What do you think this means for Toronto's red-hot housing market? Will this do anything to lower prices?
I think it really comes back to a fundamental discussion around supply, which both of my colleagues have brought forth. The government has brought forward at all levels a number of sort of disincentives to purchasing. They've looked at sort of things like the foreign buyer tax, which, net 4 years later has had virtually zero effect on the market. So I think looking at politically favorable decisions probably is not going to make ultimate change in the reality for buyers in our marketplace. I think looking at much bigger ideas around supply, looking at exclusionary zoning, where 75% of land within neighborhoods is zoned exclusively for single-family residential, that's probably not a reality in a growing market. So looking at opportunities for gentle intensification, where inventory could come to market much faster, I think really should be the focus of all levels of government in bolstering supply for a growing population.
More needs to be done. I hear that. Alon, if I can also just get your reaction to the latest housing numbers released today. Canadian home sales fell in March. Prices were up 11.2% compared with a year ago. And that is, of course, according to the Canadian Real Estate Association. What do you make of these numbers?
Well, it's interesting because prices are up a lot year over year, but the market is really changing. January and February was absolutely scorching. There's been a lot of rate hikes. There's a lot of uncertainty with Ukraine. There is more supply. More sellers are coming to the market for the spring market. And, a lot of realtors are telling me, they're not seeing a 19 bidding war offer day. They might have 2 offers. They might have 1 offer, even 0 offers. So with all of these dynamics, the funny thing is that there's more selection right now than there was a couple of months ago, and there's more choice for buyers. But these specific things from announced today that are going into effect are not going to have a big impact on prices and helping people get into homes.
Okay, I've got about 20 seconds left here. Karen, your reaction to the numbers?